What's going on, guys? I am your host Sam Paddy Projects and welcome to part 4 of the TIR build. So in today's video we are going to be sorting out this jumble of parts and we're going to be taking the subframe off of this and swapping it with the Type R subframe, and we're going to be pulling the engine out of the Type R. But we do have our favourite resident mechanic, Mr. Jordan Godfrey. How are you, sir?
Not bad, brother.
So let's jump in, let's get it done, let's smash it.
And we're off to a flying start getting that car out of the garage. And the first thing that we got to do is lift it up in the air and remove the steering rack from the inside of the car. And as you'll see here, there's only one bolt that holds the steering rack to the steering column. Pops out just like that.
And then that's just one less thing we've got to worry about when we're blowing the subframe. On doing so, we're going to take it all out in one complete go. So once we take that off, simply just undo the top mounts and then crack off all the subframe bolts. I believe there's about 3 or 4 either side, and then we're going to slowly lower it all down in one go.
So it's time to crack them loose with the breaker bar, and I'll show you where the bolts are. So one's hiding behind this bracket here into the chassis, and there's 2 at the back, 17mm. And we had to support the subframe for when it comes down. And there's one extra job to do, and that's the brake lines, because we don't want them tugging.
So we're going to undo it from here, including the 2 10mm that hold it on. Got to use that for now as a secure point to crack off the hard line. Make sure you lube it up first so they don't break off when you crack them off. And then once that's loosened, we'll put something over it just to collect any excess fluid that's going to come out. And then that'll all drop down. 3 bolts up here. Mr. Power's working on the subframe ones.
Yeah, so
3 bolts up here, and then the same again with the brake fluid lines down here.
And with the 6 subframe bolts done and the brake lines out, we were ready to take off the 3 bolts on either side of the struts to lower the subframe. Came down nice and easy. And don't forget the electrical connectors on the steering rack. And just like that, it was out.
So while Sam gets the Type R degassed, reason being is because we're going to be taking the engine out of that, we're going to be taking the aircon system off as well. You want to always make sure you get the system degassed properly and safely, otherwise it can damage the environment. And if you do it the cowboy way, it's not a nice smell. This is where we're at the moment. The TI is now officially floating. But the reason for taking this out now is that we're going to transfer everything over from the Type R because it is more of a sportier, heavier steering, and there's a few other functions that is required with the swap.
And with the subframe out of the way and the Type R back from the garage after being degassed, was ready to continue.
We are ready to start stripping the Type R for all of the donor parts. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get the engine out. So obviously that involves taking everything off of here, all the electrical connectors, all the vacuum hoses, the intake and part of the exhaust. We're going to see if we were able to take the front off and actually take it out with the manifold, because I can disconnect the cap and we'll see if we can get it out from there. If not, we'll have enough movement to be able to take that off. So that's our first problem. Second problem is when we're actually transferring over this subframe, we've got to make sure that it actually bolts up nicely. And the other bit is the engine mounts on this are slightly different, so we're going to have to do some modifications. But as long as we get this out, mocked up, see where we can do our engine mounts and our subframe goes in nicely, then we can hook it back up and then we've done well.
From the research we have done though, it should be a fairly straightforward transfer. A lot of things should connect over. They are very, very identical in terms of front ends. It's just the rear halves being a 5-door and a 3-door. So what we have to do in this is transfer everything over and transfer the beams that drop down from the chassis on this over to this. Now, from the research we have done, it should be fairly straightforward, but there is some welding that's going to need to be done. But the ideal goal for tonight is just get that everything into there, mocked up, ready to go, and then start lining up a few bits and bobs. But I'm hoping, fingers crossed, we can have the engine, gearbox sitting on 2 of the 3 engine mounts in the new shell, and a few other little miscellaneous bits, and just seeing where the game plan is from there.
Let's get active.
Let's go.
So with that being said, it was time to start stripping the front end of the Type R while I worked on the exhaust. And if you want to know how to do that properly, check out a previous video on my Scorpion exhaust install. Fast progress was being made. Jordan started stripping the front end, stripping the engine bay of the electrical connectors, bumper, wings, shrouding, and everything there and in between. And with the headlights and the crash bar out, we were making some better progress. And yes, he does actually work this fast. I'm only playing.
Go under there, mate.
Come on! Spirits are high, so we had to drain the fluids and just get ready for removing this engine. While I worked on the front of the car, removing the AC condenser and the radiator, Jordan was getting busy with those drive shafts.
That one, excuse my French, but it's out, and now we know we need a new one. Here, you shouldn't have that much free play in between, but you was also noticing and complaining about whirring noises and shit like that. We can't really get it to do it now by hand, but that shouldn't have that amount of play. And getting this out, if you ever got to do a drive shaft on the K20, especially in FN2, that's in the way. And then this bolt here, you got to get the most shallowest socket, ratchet spanner, whatever, in there. Otherwise you've got to do a mad amount of extensions and pray that you don't slip. Other than that, good progress.
Progress update from me. So I started stripping the top of the radiator and this sort of like chassis rail at the top. Only a couple of bolts. Had the boot latch there as well that had these brackets on it. Only a couple of bolts on the brackets. They basically sat there like that. Took those off. Took the bar that goes off here. That had a couple around the back, couple on the front. Nice and easy. So I think we're ready to take out the condenser and ready to take out the radiator.
So with all the bolts and fluids taken out, we could remove the condenser and remove the radiator. And then it was time to take out the last few bits from the engine bay, including the ECU, the battery tray, and the lower crossbar that also acts as a gearbox mount. And that's definitely seen better days, so that's due for some refurbishment. And after tidying up the last few electrical connectors that were connecting it to the body of the car, then we were able to start doing the engine mounts. And I'm going to be giving away free a carbon fibre shift knob. So let's see how we get entered.
Go down there into the comments, write me a comment, put subscribe next to it, hit that subscribe button, and you are in for your chance with winning a carbon fibre shift knob. But I'm going to be picking the winner with one of those spin the wheels. So your username on YouTube will go into that. I'll leave you a comment underneath your comment on mine to get in contact with you, and then I will be sending one out to you. Absolutely no reason why you shouldn't be entering, so get down there, you know what you got to do, go and do it. Plus, I'm sure that added at least 5 horsepower. Now I'm only playing. So as you would have seen, we've been making some major progress, quick progress, all in one day progress. So I'm just going to quickly run you through where we are at the moment. So we've disconnected pretty much all of the electrical connectors that we need to disconnect to be able to get the engine out. We've removed the ECU and associated clips and wiring around here if it wants to focus for me. Obviously you saw we took out the front. We've now got the jack just jacking up the engine a little bit, and the reason why we've taken out the gearbox mount is just to see how it fits on the 5-door shell. So there it is there if it wants to focus for me. So you've got the 2 bolts on the top which line up. However, there is one at the bottom which obviously has no bolt hole, which is absolutely fine because we can just make something work with that. But for now, we're just going to put the engine in and support it underneath and get it back into the garage, get it in place, because we still have further works to do. Like, we don't know whether or not it's going to connect up to the rest of the wiring in this body.
How much of the lumen we need to transfer over, there's a possibility that we could just utilise a lot of the universal features that both Hondas have. Like, both models could have the same features in certain areas, the same fuse locations and such. So we're just trying to just see, not so much cut corners, but see what we don't need to take off. The problem is there's only 1 or 2 people in the world that have actually documented all of this, and we're one of them. So we're doing our research as we go along. It does look like we could transfer over the fuses, the loom, engine loom. It should just be able to directly plug straight in, because if you have a look down here, this plug matches the one that's on the TIR. However, there's a potential that one, maybe two wires are going to be different, so we're going to have to then check the wiring diagram and then just make sure what we have to pin out, change out. We know that they do fit the plugs itself, so it's just a case of plugging it in, see what feeds we're getting from what, and triple checking the wiring diagrams. The only major concern we may have is if the fuse box here is then going to transfer over, because all we've taken off on here is 2 terminal bolts that allow sort of the main feed for the loom itself. So we're not going to know fully, but this is all trial and error, and it's new for us, just as you guys as well. So it's either going to be a case of we're going to be able to do a quick swap over, or we're going to have to change the entire loom, including the body loom. So stick with us and find out.
So with the engine jacked up on the engine crane, we just wanted to give it a little lift just to be able to get it up and keep it close to that crossbar as much as we can, and do a 90-degree turn to take it out with the gearbox and the exhaust manifold still attached. And with it out, job was done. Le bosh.
Alright, so as you would have seen, we just managed to get it out. So I'm not sure this is the way people do it. A lot of people just drop it from the bottom. Obviously, we're on a driveway. So we managed to get it out, lift in, twist in, out. So we're going to leave this right here for now, and we're going to put it in the way we took it out. So we haven't got all the mounts for it, but at the moment, we're going to get this subframe out and get the subframe on that, and then we'll be able to put this in. So let's find out if everything bolts up.
So we had to do the same process as we done on the TI for removing the subframe, and we made quick work of this because we'd already done it once.
Director's cut.
Can't forget to have fun. And with the subframe out, we just transferred it straight over to the TI shell, and it bolted up perfectly. And we removed the fuel line. And knowing how to take this engine out made it so much easier to put it in. It has to be millimetre perfect to be able to fit it in with everything still attached. And with everything still attached, it was time to just bolt it up roughly on the engine mounts that we could reach. The one you can't see is the one at the back of the engine, which goes onto the actual subframe.
Alright, so we are on the next day. So we made a lot of progress last night, but as you can see, it did get dark and it was really hard to film. So this is the bit where I update you on the bits you may not have seen. So the engine, it's in, it is in. So the only problems that we've had since mounting it is where we've put in, where we've put in the engine mount here, it's a little bit different. It's mounted a little bit differently than in the Type R shell. So obviously this piece here goes onto the engine mount that you saw on the other one. But the one thing that I've noticed is, I mean, if you look down there how close it is to the engine needs to shift over just a little bit, but where it's mounted up here, you haven't really got much room to play. And when you try and put that part of the engine mount in, it does not line up at all. So that's going to need some modification. You would have seen earlier in the video the gearbox mount, where it goes into the body of the car, the shell of the car, there is no fixing point. So we're going to have to make a fixing point for that somehow. I don't think we're going to be able to tap it, so it might have to be nut and bolt, or what we might have to do is weld a little threaded bolt onto the side, onto the back of that rail there, so then we can screw into it. Not sure how we're going to do it yet, but that needs to be structurally sound, so I'm going to have to seek some advice about that. So right at the front, where the front gearbox mount is, there should be a cross member that goes across the bottom, but obviously that is non-existent because on the rail there's a bit that drops down, and that's where you bolt that bottom bit in that holds on to the gearbox mount. But I'll quickly show you on this shell. So on this shell, that's the piece I'm talking about, and it looks like we've got some spot welds there, so we're going to have to drill them out, take that piece off as best we can, and weld it on to that rail. Same on the other side as well. So same on both sides. Then we put the bar across the bottom, and then it will mount straight onto the gearbox. So a few other bits that we've missed as well
is we did disconnect the fuel line. So this is the Type R fuel line. We've just clipped that in preventatively. Obviously we haven't done anything like solidly yet, so that's just in. And we've got some coolant hoses that go into for the heater matrix. Obviously I've plugged them up with a glove, but we swapped over those two hoses so they can be compatible with this engine. And another problem that we've encountered is the AC lines. They don't all line up. We tried to mock it up last night and they don't line up, so we're going to have to do a little bit of modification to that. As for the rad packs, I think we're going to go for a new rad, some new silicone hoses as well. But the good thing is the master cylinder and the brake fluid reservoir do look the same. They pretty much look exactly the same, so I don't think we're going to really have a problem there. Obviously we hooked up the braided line because we done a clutch damper bypass delete. You'll see that in a previous video, so we've hooked that up as well. So we've made a ton of progress. The engine is in, plenty more to do. Got some modifications coming up in the next couple of videos before we actually try and get that running, so stay tuned for that. It's your boy Sam Paddy Projects. Good luck with the live draw, and I'll catch you on the next one.